Hey guys, and welcome to the JPEZ Tutoring YouTube channel. So I'm Jessica, and I am an online reading, writing, and math tutor. My husband teaches math with me, and today I've invited some friends to talk together about what happens when tutors face some weird situations because we are all now teaching completely online. It's lots of fun. Here comes Suzanne. We're going to add her in. Okay. And some of these people here have been tutoring for a long time. So, what we're going to do, I'm just going to throw the question out there, and whoever is most bold will respond first. Okay. So, first question: what do you do when a potential client, such as a parent, makes a comment that your prices seem too expensive?
I let them go because if they think they're too expensive, then they're probably right. Like
Okay.
not that I am too expensive, but to them, that is more than they're comfortable with paying. And I have found that even if I do take them on and they agree to the price, they agree for a short period of time, and then there's something that nags in their mind that tells them this is too expensive for me. I'm not going to do it. So when I hear that, I just let it go.
Right. Have you guys had similar experiences of either the person just kind of tapering off? They were interested, but they just can't part with the money for their own personal reasons, or they tried it temporarily and then they went away? Because that's definitely happened to me before. It's just human nature.
Well, I have the students themselves contacting me. So it's always the consultation, usually with an adult. And sometimes I do have people, I can think of 2 times, who have mentioned price, and they've asked things like, well, can I get a scholarship? Or that's too high for me. Can we barter? And I didn't barter, but the first time it happened, I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll give you a scholarship," and it didn't work out. Like, that was still too much money, and ever since then, I've just always been straight up about my prices. I have them on my website, and, I'm willing to let somebody go
Mhm.
rather than try and make some kind of bargaining deal, because there's always somebody else out there willing to pay my full price.
It seems tempting to want to try to include that client because, like some of us that were in the classroom, we never had to send anybody away or like set up any barrier at all. It was just a big free for all. But now we can sort of say, hey, the reason I'm charging this is because of my expertise, is because of everything I contribute, it's because of some of the subscriptions that we have to a lot of things that we just give to you guys, like the IXL, the diagnostic, and so much more. So, Adele, do you have anything to add to the financial part of it? Because if not, we've got another question.
Yeah, I was going to add to piggyback on what Suzanne was saying. I think now my mindset is there's always going to be another student. But when I was early on in my tutoring, I was scared there's this scarcity mindset that it's hard to find your first several students. So it's hard to, see if they're gonna make it. So I did barter a couple times at the beginning, not like trading this for that, but just lowered my prices. And those students never worked out, as either they never showed up or it just never went through. And I think to echo back to what Clara was saying, not only was there something always in the back of the parent or student's head, but there was always something in the back of my head too, knowing that that is not the price that I set for myself. And not that I would offer my services begrudgingly, but it did kind of feel that way because I knew that I could have been making more money with that. And I just kind of took somebody to take money. So you have to be true to yourself when you're setting your price. That's your price. And what I do now, if people say that it's too expensive, I reach out to other tutors that I know have a price that they're comfortable with that's cheaper than mine, so that there's another option for them.
That's a great thing to do. It's a good attitude to have and say, well, hey, because of my experience and expertise where I am now, I feel that this is the fair price to charge. But I do know somebody else whose rate is a bit lower. I'd be happy to refer you to them. That's a great thing. And that's one of the valuable aspects of knowing other tutors is we all have a different price range based on like, I guess, where we are on our tutoring business journey. But that's a good point. I'm glad you said it because it's so easy to just be like, well, they can't commit, so I can't handle it. We can't. It's the better thing to do besides giving up is to refer them on, which is great. And then sometimes that person in turn might refer someone to you one day. So next question, and this, I know, Suzanne, this has not happened to you yet since you do teach like more college level students, but for some of us, sometimes when you're online with a student, especially if the student, let's say they're younger than high school, middle school and down, what do you do if a student says they're going to the bathroom or they just disappear from your online screen because we tutor online? What if they just disappear and they're gone for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes? What should you do?
I have dealt with that several times teaching elementary tutoring, and I connect really well with a lot of students with ADD, having ADD myself. So when they get up and run away, or at first I wasn't sure what was happening, usually they're just saying they're just going to the bathroom. And some of the homeschool students that I tutor don't have to ask to go to the bathroom, because they're homeschooled. So they just get up and go. So I remind them, we need to talk about that. You need to tell me that you're getting up to leave. But also if they're gone for a longer period of time and they're my younger students, there's always an adult somewhere around. So I text their mom or whatever I always have the parents' text phone number so that I can get a hold of them for any reason, really. But that's what I do with the little kids.
Yeah, it's another step, but it's like the parent can be your friend so much of the time because sometimes the parent's like, hey, get back to it, It's happened to me once, and it is kind of a turnoff because then you think the kid doesn't really want to be there because sometimes they don't, maybe it's not really personal. They just don't want to have to sit there and be on when some of them already go to school and now they're here with someone they don't really know. They've only met online and they're just kind of, but I do know that when it happened to me and I reached out to the parent, it did fix it. And I was very forthcoming with the student. And I mean, because they were a little, they were middle school age, so I could somewhat reason with them and say, here's what I saw. I want you to feel comfortable with me. I want you to, let's hash it out. Why did you do it? And then that did help. So, any other comments on the disappearing act? All right, guys. Esme was trying to get in and couldn't, so she may be commenting with us, and that's all right. All right. Speaking of people trying to get in and out of the online portal, what happens if Zoom is very glitchy and it's just disrupting your tutoring session? Should you quit and say, forget it, we'll reschedule, or do you have a backup?
Well, I haven't had it that it was so bad that we got disconnected for a long period of time. I usually am able to say with the online portal, why don't we try turning off our cameras, or you can turn off your camera, because being on screen uses up 80% of the energy on Zoom. So very often just doing that one little thing will help. And you can always communicate, if you want by phone, to have somebody on screen. But I find usually it's just a few minutes and it hasn't really interrupted things. There was one time where somebody had such a bad glitch that we did reschedule. I tried Skype with them first, and Skype, I just think it was the country he was from. It was so difficult because it didn't work on Skype either as a backup plan. Nice.
Esme is saying backup calls, and Clara mentioned this too, that you can always, if you have to, you can call them on the phone because you can still instruct to some degree on your phone. You have to be able to be flexible enough to do that. I mean, you can still read and pronounce and things on the phone, or using FaceTime. That is another one. I've actually used, Google Meet haven't used it in several weeks, but I've had to use that before because, and it was almost better because the student was like, she had a bit more control of it for some reason. She was changing her little background and she was excited. And I thought, okay, if she's excited, then she's in a good mood and thus she's ready to learn. So that'll work. What absolutely doesn't work for me is when I get online with a kid and they're on the phone, the phone version of Zoom. That stresses me out secretly because I know that I can't have them take a diagnostic test through the phone. Like, it's not good for them to try to see questions. It hasn't really worked. But if that does happen, you have to be able to say, what can I teach them? What can we do now since they're on the phone? And the parent tries to get on the laptop, and sometimes that doesn't work, so they resort to the phone. You're like, no, but you don't want to be difficult. You have to be an accommodating tutor, you know? Okay. Any more comments on Zoom glitches before we go on to the next question? Yes, Clara.
Sometimes Zoom does glitch for me, and sometimes I actually do use Zoom instead of FaceTime. So I've instructed my students that if Zoom is having that scrolly wheel that's saying that connection is unstable, I tell them to continue working on their problem on Jamboard, because that is another way that we communicate with each other, because we have a shared online whiteboard, so we can see what the other person is doing anyway, and then they can type their message to me if they need to say something, and we just wait until the connection's better, and then we just kind of ignore the Zoom problem while it's happening.
Do your students meet with you on the Chromebook? Because I find that the Chromebook is sometimes the worst.
Yes.
Most of my students, being elementary age, are on Chromebooks or tablets. So they're just more, I guess they're more affordable and easier to destroy. I don't know.
Yeah,
Most of my students are on Chromebooks. I don't notice that it's more glitchy or not. I was trying to figure that out for some, but I do notice, and this was new for me to learn, there is something that they need to download in order to be able to share the mouse with me, which is super important for what I'm doing with younger students with ADD. They need to have the hands-on experience. So I need to be able to share my mouse to keep them engaged. I honestly don't know what it is right now, but I will get back to you on it. There is an add-on thing that their parents can download to their computer to allow Zoom to have the same capability.
Yeah. I really love to have that student screen share. I mean, mine are, usually middle or high school. So if the student can screen share with me, I can direct them where to go. Now, if we ever need to read from the same document, sometimes it's just easier if I'm sharing it with them, and that way I'm kind of moving it. You have to decide who's going to drive the class today. Is it going to be me? Am I guiding them, or are they kind of doing more of the independent work? And then I'm giving them feedback. Like, I might time them. Okay, for 6 minutes, I want you to respond to this. I want you to write your paragraph, and I'll kind of sit there and look and make comments, or I might, check my phone or something, and then we go back. But with SAT, I have to give them control of the digital document. And SB, that's what I'm doing with Matthew, is I'm like, you don't want me to be the one to have to scroll up every few minutes when you complete some questions. They need to be able to drive that, so that when they're done with the section I've given them, then I can give them feedback, and I'll say which one, and he'll scroll, and we can do more of those things. So there's really a lot to it that you have to mentally transition to from the classroom to this. So let's kind of jump to the next question here. This is really like the last major question, but we can chat for a few more minutes today. So what do you do if a parent asks you to tutor something that you don't really, you don't advertise? Like, for example, if you are a reading teacher, an elementary reading teacher, and the parent says, hey, they've got some math homework. Do you think you could help out today? It's very important for us.
Yeah, I have done that before. Just over the summer, I tutored 2 of my students in math and reading. And honestly, I did it just for them. I don't enjoy it typically, but I would do it just to help them out. I feel like next summer, if I have people ask me to tutor other things, I might recommend other people, because it became a burden on my planning and kind of a drag towards that time of day where I kind of dreaded it. So I have the freedom to be able to do that. So I'm going to do that.
Okay. Suzanne, what about you? Have you ever had to sort of do something a little different? Because sometimes it can be like, oh, good. Yeah, you get excited when you're able to help people with something you know. But if you're not sure, it's like, what do I tell them?
I haven't done that too much because I just haven't had that occur. I do sometimes have a student who will say all of a sudden, I have this thing, I have this test, this writing test or something, and they'll say at the last minute, and I'm not sure. But I'm so flexible that I can just switch gears to that. I do send them out I use Google Classroom all the time. I do put out agendas prior to when I meet with the student, and I always say, hey, take a look at this. Is there something else that you want to change or cover? And that usually gives me a warning ahead of time. But it's very different, I think, when you teach older students, when you teach high school, going into college. And, I just think it's a very different setup.
We have the whole mixture right here in this group
Yes.
of the levels. I think that's awesome. That kind of just happened by design here. Esme saying, yeah, she's done some compound interest problems. I haven't done it in a while, but so usually my husband's handling all the math and because he's good at that. But I have helped a fifth grader with math and like multiplying like 2 and 3 digit numbers. I'm like, oh, I can do that. But when they're struggling, it's harder for me to slow it down and break it down because, I'm not the typical math instructor. But on some of the word problems, I realized I can do them now. I couldn't really do them back then because I would just look at math and shut down, be like, that's is too hard. But I try to use that to encourage them. I'll say, hey, listen, math was never my subject either. I wanted to just go to school and sit in a little chair and read books all day. That was the fun part for me. I didn't really want to go to the math class because the teacher talked too fast and she went over things too quickly for me. But, that's the beauty of a tutor. For us, especially, we know somebody who can do it. If we can't do something to the best of our ability, we can refer people onward. So, does anyone have a comment about having to teach something else or kind of being put on the hot seat by the parent when the parent will ask you something difficult? Because those are my questions for today. So before we wrap up, I could keep on going, but I won't. What are some things that how about this? What are some things you've encountered in your tutoring business that you just didn't expect?
I've got one.
Okay.
So I teach adults, and what I didn't realize, I'd learned this at college, like different cultures and different people from all over the world interpret your clothing differently or your shoes differently, and they get these different impressions about who you are. And in the Northeast, when it's cold, we wear a lot of those fleece tops or like a Sherpa top. And so I was wearing one day, and the student across from me was like, you're wearing your bathrobe. Why are you tutoring me in your bathrobe? And I just didn't look formal enough for them. I'm like, no, this isn't a bathrobe. This is a nice Sherpa shirt. And, I was like, oh, I've really got to think about what I wear and how it translates. And that was kind of an interesting moment. It was something I didn't expect because so many times as a tutor, I try and dress professional, and I thought that Sherpa top was, but now I really rethink what I wear on camera. And so it's mostly like sweaters and shirts that look not so much formal, but a little bit more dressed up.
That's pretty fascinating. I have a robe that I've had for a long time. It's like my best friend in like the winter months, and I just told myself, don't you dare teach in that. Don't you dare teach in that. And I haven't, but because it doesn't look great. But I can understand when you're cold, the whole point is to teach well, not to necessarily worry about looks. But because I think we worry about our looks a lot less now that we're in our home offices or wherever we're teaching from. What other surprises, maybe Clara or Adele, you've dealt with something that was like, well, only experience prepared me for that. It's never reading ahead about it or anything?
I've been surprised at how many occupations require math for their program. So this would include pilots,
Wow.
nurses, and police officers. So I've had a few students come to me as adults asking for help to get them through these entrance exams. Um, Students in high school often ask, when do I ever need to use this math? This is
Mm,
when.
wow. That's perfect. You have a real example, like this real cop told me, this pilot told me. So is it just for the entrance exam they must prove their competency, or is it do they I know some professions you have to keep taking a test every so often?
I think it depends on the profession. So I know one of my nursing student had to take nursing math. Like she got tested every so often on something about medication, like medication dosage. So throughout her program, she was tested on things like that.
We always think we know stuff once we've passed a test, but really the stuff gets fuzzy. I mean, the other day somebody had a question about an adverb, and I was like, I thought it took me a little longer to think about it because a few months ago I was really focusing more on grammar with a few students, and I haven't done it in about a month. We've been doing other things, and I'm like, oh, let's see. Yeah, I know this, but hold on. Like, you have to really bone up on that. Adele, what surprises? Well, before I forget, with this, apparently this happens sometimes at an assessment. A parent was slapping their child around. That is that's a strange sensation, isn't it? When whether I remember being in the classroom and like being in a teacher's meeting with a parent and the parent just really going after their kid and you're like, I don't know whether to be glad this is happening or to feel like this is too personal. Like I don't need to be hearing this. That's weird. But that's slapping around. That's a little it's hard to know what to do. I guess you're just like, I'm going to turn my camera off and just wait for this to settle down, or sorry, I lost contact with you. Oh, you can get yourself out of an awkward situation by just closing the laptop. All right, any surprising stuff?
In addition to teaching students with ADD, I also have a handful of kids that are on the autistic spectrum. And so I have learned to be flexible with them. One of my favorite students, we read novels together and we talk about, just do some oral comprehension on the novels. And she tends to do better when we do like half of the discussion, like in class, and then we start reading the next chapter together, then she's able to finish it on her own. But being neurodivergent, she has a different way of enjoying a book. So every day, sometimes it's an opera reading. Sometimes she's using her opera voice. Sometimes she's using all kinds of different voices. Sometimes she's reading with her head behind a blanket, but she can still see the words that I'm sharing through the holes. I've learned to be flexible. I mean, she's meeting the standard that I want her to meet. She's reading, she's talking about the books, and she may be acting a little goofy, but she's still getting done what we need to get done. So I just learned a little bit extra flexibility because there's things aren't typically going to happen in the classroom,
Yeah, we can't let it happen because it would bother some other kid, and then there'd be a back and forth, and then it'd be 3 or 4 kids, and then suddenly you're spending the whole class period managing that disruption instead of getting to teach the kids. So that's the beauty of one-on-one, which we all know and excel at. So I'm going to kind of power down our discussion. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add while we're here and people can view it? Anything? So let's do this. Each of you sort of just say what you do. I know we didn't do that in the beginning. So Clara, remind everybody what you do in your math business. And then we're going to go to Adele. Then we'll go to Suzanne. Then we'll close out. Okay.
My name is Clara Tong. I tutor math online to students in pre-algebra through Calculus 2. I help students gain confidence, improve grades, and achieve goals.
Awesome.
And I'm Adele Southall. I'm an elementary reading tutor, and I help students gain confidence in the reading skills that they need to be successful learners.
Oh, Suzanne, hold on. We got to turn your mic Can't hear you.
Oh, I'm not used to StreamYard. I apologize.
Yeah.
So, hi, I'm Suzanne Davis. I'm an academic writing tutor. I work with high school students going into college, college students, and graduate students, all helping them master those writing skills that they need to accomplish whatever their next level or goal is, whether it's getting into college or in a graduate program or some type of field that they want to really improve their writing in.
It's necessary. And let's see. All right. So, and then Esme was here. We had a couple other people come in. Guys, we can, as this ends, we can feel free to comment, tell me what you tutor and all that good stuff. And you can share this video just to kind of hear from our different perspectives. So, you guys are awesome. I'm going to end the broadcast and then we can say goodbye later on StreamYard. So, thanks for watching, everybody out there. You're amazing.